G'day fellas, and welcome to a long overdue tier list. It's been quite some time since we've done one. This time we're going to be doing a tier list for Season 4. Now, Season 4 isn't out yet. In fact, it's still a couple of weeks away. So this tier list is going to be about where I suspect we're going to be seeing each civilization fall. Now, before we get into the new tier list, it's important to go over what the previous one looks like. Now, I didn't do a tier list for Season 3, but just to give you a bit of an idea what it looked like, we had China at the top together with the English, and then after that we had the Holy Roman Empire, the Abbasid dynasty, the Mongols, and the Ottomans. These civilizations were all really good picks. Delhi kind of fell away, and the same as the French. Malians were a really good civilization as well. They were kind of sitting around the A tier, even looking to go up towards the S tier, but I think overall they probably finished somewhere around the B or the A tier. And then, of course, we've got the Rus, which comes in dead last. Poor Rus. I mean, they've not been doing very well since the changes to the town center, just simply because it's so much harder for them to get that type of extra town center playstyle that they love so much. So that's what the old tier list looked like. Now, let's talk about the new tier list, because this is about the future. It's about where do we go from here. Now, I've also got access to the pup. Still, yes, that's correct. We're on the 29th of January now at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and we're still here on the pup. As you can see, we've got access to the Abbey of Kings, which can crown a king. Look, I'll be honest, I'm surprised, and touch wood, my game hasn't crashed yet. So we'll be able to use this as a reference to talk about the things that we are going to be speaking about. So, to start off with our tier list, we're going to put in, we're going to work our way from the bottom up to the top. And we're going to start with a civilization that you're probably expecting to see at the bottom. It is once again the Rus. Look, the Rus changes, they were interesting, but unfortunately I don't think they were really enough to warrant this civilization moving up in strength. At the moment, the Rus is very powerful. Well, I should say, at the moment, the Rus have a very powerful feudal age landmark, and that is their Golden Gate. Their Golden Gate allows you, if you've got bad macro, to have good macro, and it also allows you to be very flexible. This is an amazing landmark, and the Kremlin, while it's an interesting direction, I don't think it adds enough value to a lot of what the Rus want to do, and because of that, I don't think their playstyle changes a lot, and because their playstyle doesn't change a lot, I don't think their position really changes much on the ranked ladder, unfortunately. So if you are a Rus enjoyer, I'm sorry, but it does suck. Next up, we're going to be having another civilization that I think people might disagree with me on this one. It's going to be the Ottomans, a civilization that's going to be in the B tier here. Now, the Ottomans obviously didn't get any changes in the most recent patch, and the civilization is a predictable civ. It's got access to two main strategies. Number one is the feudal timing, and the second one is going to be for the castle age timing. But increasingly, it seems that Ottoman players are getting countered with a lot of what they're doing. They're not looking the strongest. So whether that means that the Ottomans have got to iterate on what they're doing to try and find something that works, but when it comes to the way that the meta is going at the moment, which is trending towards a heavier town center play, a more boomy style, once again, we're heading back towards that. Despite the town center changes, we are seeing more and more town centers. I think that really weakens the Ottomans' position, because they are very in favor of trying to go for like this kind of big attack, and unfortunately their attack takes some time to get off its feet. And because of that, because you need time to set up your military schools, your enemy is going to be able to defend you. So if they go 2 town centers, like as an example, Chinese 2TC can easily defend against an Ottoman, English 2TC, French 2TC, anybody 2TC can easily defend against the Ottomans and what they're doing. And as a result, I think that is part of why they sit down in the B tier. Next up, it's going to be another, I guess, I think whenever you put a civilization down low, there's always going to be people that are like upset that that's where their civilization is, and they'll try and find a way to justify why that civilization shouldn't be in that tier. But I'm also going to be putting the Malians in the B tier. So the Malians, as we talked about before, they kind of moved, they started off low and then they came up, and now they've come back down. So I think people have started working out the way to counter the Malians. So we've seen a lot of people looking to play with the fast castle strategy that was pioneered and popularized by Salami. And that was a really good strategy, and it's worked well. And I think it's still quite a strong strategy. The thing is, once again, it is a predictable strategy. And people are working out more and more that if you open with a trade landmark, it doesn't necessarily mean you're going to be doing trade. So people are starting to learn to play around that. And as a result, I think that the Malians' position hasn't really changed too much throughout this patch. If anything, they've kind of, well, they've pretty much stayed exactly the same. We've only seen their house buffed up from an extra 400 health up to 500 health. And because of that, I don't think they really changed their position at the moment. So I think that the two new civilizations are a little bit weaker than the OG civs with the exception of the Rus. But let's move into the A tier, which is where it might seem strange, but where the bulk of these civilizations are going to be. And you might be thinking, Drongo, that doesn't make sense. Shouldn't the B tier be where, you know, most of the civs are? And to an extent, yes. But I do think that the remaining civs are all so good and all so viable that you should be more than happy to pick these guys up in the ranked, and you wouldn't be in a position to blame your enemy's civilization for your loss. Let's just say that much, because you'd be playing a really good civ. If you're playing the Rus on the ladder and you lose to the English, it's like, oh man, this is a hard matchup. It's like, bro, you're playing the Rus. Everything's a hard matchup for you. So anyway, let's get to it. So we're going to start off with our first demotion. I guess the Ottomans was technically a demotion as well, but a demotion from the S tier. A fall from grace, if you will, the Chinese. No longer are they going to be in the S tier. They're going to be down, sitting in the A tier. There's a couple of reasons why the Chinese are going to be down in the A tier, but mainly just because, well, they didn't receive a whole bunch of changes in the reworked landmarks. I mean, realistically, they got access to a bigger battering ram. That's pretty much it. There weren't a whole bunch of other changes for them. But primarily, we've seen China start to fall off just because they're not having as many villages as they once used to. You used to be able to produce a lot of villages from your town centers. Now you're just producing, well, you're still producing a lot of villages, just not as fast. And because of that, China falls down, in my opinion, quite far. It means that your timings are a little bit off, and you don't have that same lead getting into Imperial that you used to have. Your enemy's going to be pretty easily able to keep up with you. As an example, you know, 2 TC French is going to be able to keep up with 2 TC Chinese. You couldn't do it before with 2 TC French, but now you can. 2 TC English into the King's Palace, that's going to keep up with it. You know, the Abbasid dynasty is going to keep up with it. Holy Roman Empire, that's a great matchup into it. So China has a pretty tough matchup against a lot of these civilizations at the top. And I think as a result, that kind of brings them down a little bit, not to mention the fact that their late game is just now starting to lack. Obviously, in team games, they're still an absolute behemoth, but they're not the team game, or they're not the late game gods that they once used to be, and as a result, they do come down from that S tier down to the A tier. In addition to being in the A tier with the Chinese, it's going to be the Holy Roman Empire. They receive a whole bunch of changes in this patch, and most notably the changes to the mine work, I think are really quite big, and I wouldn't be surprised if we do see this civilization look to push towards the S tier. There's a couple of strategies that I'm looking forward to, mainly a feudal-orientated strategy I think could be really strong with the Holy Roman Empire, and as a result, I think that they're a really solid pick. Their ability to play into knights now a lot more heavily than they once used to, so you normally saw the Holy Roman Empire open with knights in the Castle Age, but then they would transition into more of like a horseman, lance connect, you know, man-at-arms kind of composition. But now I suspect we're going to actually see quite a lot of knights out. We've also seen, I think there was a change to the way that prelates work as well. They've reduced down the healing, but I don't think that's necessarily going to be too big for the Holy Roman Empire, just mainly because you're not really focusing on healing, but more just buffing the individual units with your prelates. So I think the Holy Roman Empire are a really solid pick. Got a lot of great matchups as well at the top level. The main issue that you're going to have up against you is the Mongol matchup. This is a pretty tough matchup, but we have seen ways that people are dealing with the French matchup, which is to open with horsemen and spearmen in the feudal age. 2TC has also been another thing that we've been seeing a lot of Holy Roman Empire players testing out, which is great to see. So now, all of a sudden, they are much more diverse in their strategies, and this is a really good thing for the Holy Roman Empire. So next up, the next civilization that we're going to be talking about in the A tier is going to be the Mongols. So the Mongols do receive a couple of changes, but realistically not a huge change to their game plan and game style. What's going to be happening with the Mongols is their Kurultai was buffed. Kurultai received a big buff, and basically it means that the range is larger on the Kurultai, and you don't need the Khan nearby anymore, which was a very limiting factor on the Kurultai and the strength of it, because if you lost the Khan, then you lost a significant portion of that landmark. Now, the Kurultai being buffed isn't necessarily a buff to the Kurultai, but rather it is a buff to trade, because now all of a sudden Mongol trade becomes more attractive. You see that there are two pathways that we typically look at when we're playing the Mongols. The first one is based around the deer stones into the steppe redoubt, because the steppe redoubt is going to be giving us extra gold. But we don't need that extra gold if we do start off with the silver tree, because we're getting our gold from traders. And as a result, the silver tree can then go into the Kurultai. So by buffing up the Kurultai, you're buffing up trade in that regard. And so I do think we're going to see even more Mongol players looking to go into trade with these buffs, which is exciting. I think that trade is a really exciting aspect of Age of Empires 4, and it promotes good games, because if you've got a player trading, then the other player will have to try and stop them. That's pretty much the way that it works. So next civilization that I'm going to be putting in the A tier here is going to be the French. Now, the French are a civilization that I would just be putting a little asterisk next to and say, watch out for this civilization, because it could be moving up to the S tier as well. The main reason is because of French trade. Now, there's a couple of build orders that I've been working on. You would have seen them on the YouTube channel, just with regard to French trade. French trade is very, very scary. And the main reason French trade is so scary is not because it's got big numbers like the Ottomans or the Malians, or, you know, it's very quick like the Mongols trade. It's because it forces the enemy to come out of their comfort zone. You're playing against the English. The English like to stay in their base. They like to be defensive. And now the French player starts trading. And the French player is then forcing the English player, hey man, come, you got to attack me. I'm trading. You're going to have to come and get me. And because of that, the French can then capitalize on their knights. Once their enemy gets out of position, then they can just kill them. So I do suspect we're going to see quite a lot of people looking to play trade with the French. I suspect it's probably going to become almost standard on maps where there's good trading post spawns. And keep in mind, you do have access through the French to with your bonus to see trading posts. So your trading posts are revealed on the minimap at the start of the game. So this is a really, really big advantage that you've got with the French. And of course, I mean, I don't have to mention it, but the fact that you can choose what resource you want to return as well is really nice. But the 6 free traders that you get in the feudal age, together with the option to add in more traders, means that this civilization could potentially go from the A tier to the S tier, depending on how strong that trade is. So now we move to the final tier. That's correct. There's going to be 3 civilizations in the final tier. The first one, and I'm pretty sure this is going to be the best one, the English. The English receive so many great changes that just cover their weaknesses. At the same time, they also receive nerfs that reduce the power of their strengths. But the English as a civilization is a very flexible civ. You've got so many different options available to you. So scouting is very important against the English to know what they're up to. But the reason why the English, I think, are S tier now is because they've got no true weakness anymore. They've got an incredibly strong feudal age through landmarks like the Council Hall and units like the Longbowmen. But they can move into a castle age that is very well defended once again through the Council Hall, because it now has access to the crossbowmen. And the crossbowman is going to be countering those units that would typically be hitting the English with a timing attack. Things like the knights, things like the men-at-arms. And now all of a sudden you've got a response to that. And it means that once you get through that early game, that early to mid game, that you are on stable ground. And once you're on stable ground, you can look to get into your farm transition. You can look towards that Imperial Age if you so choose to, where you've got access to some of the best technologies in the game. Things like, that's not the correct building. Here we go. Things like enclosures, one of the best technologies that you can have in the late game. Another really good late game technology is going to be available for you at the Siege Workshop, and that is going to be your shattering projectiles, and that's going to synergize really well with your Wingard Palace, which is going to allow you to build your Wingard army where you get that trebuchet out. It's not for free, but it's basically for free. It's so damn cheap. And so it's because of that that I think that the English are going to be above, or I was almost tempted to put them in the S+ tier. That's how good I think that they're going to be. So next up, we've got the Abbasid dynasty. The Abbasid dynasty have received some interesting changes, interesting being underscored and bolded and italicized right there, most notably going to be to the economic wing of the House of Wisdom, Fertile Crescent. I think at first people looked at this and they were like, yeah, not really. And then now we're kind of like, actually, this is kind of good. This is kind of busted when you think about it. Okay, so there's so many levels as to why this works. It costs 100 resources, but when you think about how much it's saving from your town centers, let's just talk about that. So you spend 100 resources and you save off the first town center, off the very first town center, you're saving, where is that bad boy? There it is. You're saving 200 resources. So your town center comes down from 400, well, it's almost 200 resources. I think it's 190. So your town center goes from 400 wood to 300 wood, and from 350 stone down to 260 stone. It is, or 262 stone, if we want to be specific. So already through that first technology, you're saving twice the investment that you put into it. Every subsequent town center that you build, you're going to be saving 200 more resources. But what's really great about this is that it reduces the barrier to entry on additional town centers. So it means that you don't have to start off a game and be like, okay, this game I'm going to go for 3 town centers, and then I'm going to go for fast castle. What you can actually do is be like, well, I'm just going to put 1 villager on stone, and I'm going to defend any aggression, and when I get to that benchmark of 260 stone, I'll just build my second town center. And then, depending on how the game goes, I can just add in more town centers because they're so affordable. And that's exactly what we've started to see happen. We've seen players look to go for 4 or 5 town centers quite often because of Fertile Crescent. When it comes to the other wings, Preservation of Knowledge doesn't really change the way that the civilization plays that much. The main change is going to be through the military wing, because they've moved composite bows up to the Castle Age, which is a great technology. They've also changed the way that the military wing works so that you now get camel riders in the Castle Age. So I think a really, really strong opening is Fertile Crescent, economic wing into military wing in the Castle Age. Really, really amazing combination of wings. And I think that by far this is going to be the standard that you'll see. Even though I love the trade wing, even though, you know, it spawns 3 traders and then all of a sudden, you know, it acts as a home market as well. The home market thing is negligible. It doesn't do anything. Turning the House of Wisdom into a home market doesn't change the civilization at all. It's those 3 free traders. But I don't think those 3 traders are really enough to offset the bonuses that you get from Fertile Crescent. I think largely that when it comes to the Abbasid dynasty, they're unexplored with regard to trade, just simply because of how much synergy there is through villages, through things like fresh foodstuffs, which reduces the cost of the villager from 50 food down to 32 food. So there's really good synergy in this technology and more town centers, because the more town centers you can make, the more town centers can take advantage of fresh foodstuff. So there's really good synergy between fresh foodstuffs and through the economic wing at Fertile Crescent. And as a result, I think people are going to tend to avoid trade. It just doesn't seem to make sense. It's a very high risky, or a very high risk play when the reward is basically just the same as the economic wing. So I don't see people going for this a whole bunch. And because of that, I don't think there's really going to be a shift in the way the civilization plays, other than not going for the culture wing early on. Like, you might see people go to imp with the culture wing. But even then, there's not a huge amount here. Like, maybe Preservation of Knowledge is about the only thing that really matters. Proselytization can be good in certain matchups. If you're playing against the Delhi Sultanate, this is a really good technology to go into. But obviously, it's an Imperial Age technology. So it's one of those things where it's like, you've still got to wait quite some time for it. But overall, I think the civilization, Abbasid dynasty, is going to be a very strong contender in the S tier civilization. It's going to be solid on every single map. They're good on water maps, very good on hybrid maps, incredibly good on land maps now with Fertile Crescent, just simply because they can put a town center down wherever they want. And I think the most important part as well is if you lose a town center, like, you're not losing that many resources now. Like, you're losing much less resources. Instead of losing the what was it, the 750 from before, now you're only losing 560. So it might not seem like a lot, but it really will start to add up over the course of the game. The final civilization, it's going to be the Delhi Sultanate. Now, I know I've casted a few games and we haven't seen the Delhi Sultanate win. And I think the truth is that people just haven't found their feet yet. I think DeMuslim has found the feet of the Delhi Sultanate. I really like the way that DeMuslim has been playing the Delhi. I think this is 100% the way that the civilization will be played. And it's because of that it will be at the S tier. So what are the goals for the Delhi Sultanate when you're thinking about any matchup, any game? Number 1, it's make a feudal army and secure the sacred sites. Number 2, capture all 3 sacred sites. You're not going for a sacred victory, you just want the gold. Number 3, get up to Castle Age and take the relics. Number 4, make sure you go up with the Compound of the Defender and utilize their village fortress bonuses. Number 5, put your keeps on the sacred sites or other places around the map and use them to make villages. Number 6 is either you win the game through a sacred site victory, or you win the game by outscaling your enemy because you've got 130 villages and they're sitting on 62. So that's the reason why I think Delhi is going to be S tier. They're a very versatile civilization in their responses that they can issue. Even though they do seem quite straightforward and streamlined in their strategy, they're a predictable civilization. You know what they're going to do most of the time. You know, if you play against a Delhi player and they don't go for the sacred sites, well, you can just you count your ELO now and you'll play later. Let's just put it that way. So I think that this civilization is going to be a really strong contender for the S tier spot as well. But overall, this is going to be my suspected tier list for Season 4 for Age of Empires 4. Let me know what you think down in the comments, and just remember that this is subjective, okay? This is what I think. This is my opinion. That doesn't mean that it's bad. It just means that it's my opinion. What's your opinion, though? I'm curious to know what you think. You know, we've been doing a little bit of I guess you could say, like, videos together now, Beastie and I. I'd love to know what Beastie thinks about where the civilizations are going to be in the next season as well, because obviously he does some tier lists from time to time. So let's see exactly what you guys think. I want to hear what Beastie thinks, and of course, we'll catch you guys in the next one. Thank you so much for watching.